Okay, I think we're live, right, Mike? Based on the
Sounds like it.
instructions.
I think so.
Okay, so hi everyone joining us. Um, Thank you for coming and for attending this seminar with Mike Levin and myself, Oded Rechavi. And it's a pleasure really talking to Mike. I was thinking of having a glass of wine or something. This is going to be this type of webinar where we just really discuss ideas and AI in science. It's a very broad topic. So AI in science pretty much everything. So it used to be that AI was a sort of something you needed to uh, think about, but now it's like air or like water for fishes, it's just everywhere. So it's in every discussion, no matter what the topic is, AI will be brought into center stage. And so first of all, let me introduce um, Mike, and I'll do it very briefly. Mike, I'll be happy if you expand a little bit. Mike is a developmental biologist from Tufts and Harvard, studying so many different things, doing really unusual and extremely creative and original science, from bioelectricity to xenobots to, in your past, even Siamese twins and all kinds of things. Really runs an extremely active and prolific group. And and I'm Oded Rechavi. I work in Tel Aviv University, and I'm a biologist, also studying many different topics. The main one of which is epigenetic inheritance in C. elegans in nematodes, but also very different things like um, economic irrationality, brain parasites, ancient DNA, lots of different things. And before we start and tackle this topic of AI in science, I want to say that both Mike and I want to, first of all, do a few disclosures. Disclosures. So I'm involved with, I'm a co-founder in QED Science, which is an AI company creating tools for biologists, for scientists, for review of papers, of grants, of the scientific corpus, and trying to build up this validity layer for the scientific corpus. So that's important to say, sort of conflict of interest on my part. And maybe Mike, you want to add something as well?
Sure. Yeah, and great to see you, Oded. Really looking forward to our discussion. Just a few things on my side. So I'm involved with, and I work 100% for Tufts University. So I don't work for any of these companies, but I do have scientific co-founder status on them. And so Softmax is one, and they are involved in novel approaches to AI. Morphoceuticals is a company that looks to do regeneration based on some of the bioelectric principles that we've discovered. Astonishing Labs, which works on a number of things from our lab having to do with aging and learning in cells and tissues and things like that. And then there's a company called Unravel, which develops drugs for rare diseases, especially neurological diseases, and another one called Nefesh, which is in the artificial life space. So those are my disclosures.
Great. Okay, so by and large, I mean, the topic was AI in science, but I want to maybe, for the sake of framing the discussion, which by the way will be about 45 minutes long, I think. And I'll add to the person asking the Q&A whether he's the only one. So no, there are 200 people signed up to the webinar. You just can't see each other. This type of Zoom. So I thought of structuring the discussion around three main big topics. One of them is, and this is highly connected to what you study in your interest in intelligence, Mike. How does AI think, and how is AI's thinking different than ours? And how do we expect this to influence the type of discoveries, the type of science AI can do versus the type of science we can do? How can we complement AI if we can? Where we will always have an advantage over AI if we will? And we'll dive into that. That will be the first topic that we'll discuss for the first 15 minutes or so. We'll leave also a room for questions from the audience. The other topic is how will AI affect um, the process of doing science, our day-to-day as scientists, how we come up with ideas, how we brainstorm, how we write papers, how we run our teams, how we teach. And the last one would be a more structural question: how would this change the world of science? The structure of academia. Will there be PhD degrees handed out? Will there be permanent positions, like tenured positions in universities? How would this affect dissemination of science, publishing, allocation of funds, and so on? So I think this is a very broad idea for what we want to discuss. Well, let's start with the first topic, which is the thinking that AI does, if that's the right word to think about it. Of course, I don't think in this discussion we necessarily want to go into the specifics, the technical details of how AI works. I'm not a computer scientist. Mike is also a computational, so perhaps you can say more if you wish, but I don't think that is our job. I think that it's more like our impressions of how it works and how it evolves, and how do we even approach it to sort of try to understand how it does what it does. I'll start by saying that early on, 2023, so it was only 3 years ago or so, but it seems like a million years ago. And also, later stages, a year ago, even, or 2 years ago, there was a lot of criticism about AI being limited. AI in science so it hallucinates. It has certain things that it can't do, that it does badly. But I think, but there's one assumption, and it might not be true, which is that AI will keep improving. That is a possibility that we have to deal with. And I'm at least thinking about it when I'm thinking about my place in the world. And the question is, Mike, where do you see AI's intelligence as different than ours? And how do you think that it thinks, or how do you think its intelligence emerges? You study emergent systems and intelligence also in very simple organisms, even single cellular organisms. So it's a very open question. Where do you see this?
So I have some kind of unusual things to say, and then I have some really crazy things to say. Right? Those are the two buckets. So let's start with the less crazy. And just to give a background, in my group. So my background is computer science, and then later biology. My lab studies intelligence in a very wide variety of substrates. So we study everything from slime molds to single cells, organs, groups of organisms. We study minimal computational models, gene regulatory networks, like all kinds of weird things. So that's the background for mine. So when you say ours, we can think about humans, but I typically, when you say ours, I mean like all biology, for example, right? I'm interested in how biological systems process information, and what does it mean to try to copy that or to find different ways of doing it. So I think fundamentally, there's a couple of things to know. First, there's something very fundamentally different about the way biology and our current architectures treat information, memory. Let's talk about memory. So the thing about in biology, and tell me if you disagree with any of this, but the biological material is fundamentally unreliable. You're guaranteed to be mutated. You don't know what your environment is going to be. You don't know how many copies of any protein you have. Like, everything is somewhat unreliable. And so what that means is that you can do one as a solution to this. You can do one of two things. What we did on the computer side is we decided to fight it with error correction. So that means abstraction layers. So when you write in high level code, you don't think about the copper and whether your silicon is floating off somewhere. You don't think about that because a good computer guarantees you can't see any of that stuff, right, at the higher levels. So error correction, we abstraction layers, and we maximize the fidelity of the data. I write my data and I want it to stay exactly how it is. What I think happens in biology is something completely different. Because at any given moment, you as a living being who lives in time doesn't have access to the past. You don't know what happened in the past. The only thing you have access to is the memory traces that were formed by past versions of you. You have messages from past you, and you can interpret those messages, but inevitably information was lost because you compress them into engrams. And so biology is creative, whether it be with behavioral memories or DNA. I think the genome is exactly the same. It's a prompt. And at any given moment, you have to creatively interpret that prompt, which is partially what gives biology its incredible resilience and robustness. And we have many examples of this that I can say.
So you're thinking about it not only, so you're thinking about it also as a feature, as something that allows us to be more creative.
Yeah, when people say, "Oh, these things confabulate," say, "Oh my God, of course." Not only do humans confabulate, like the psychologists have known this for the longest time, and there's some cool examples of it. But fundamentally, I think of it as improvisation. So when you think of the exact same genome, can be a human, it could be an anthrobot, it could probably be 1,000 other things. That ability to interpret and reinterpret, not to have allegiance to the past, not to overtrain on your priors, but to say, this is what I have now, well, this is the environment. It is a living matter is an agential material. It's a problem-solving system. That is very different from how up till now we've been building our devices.
So, but in theory, that could change. It's up to us to design these systems differently.
Yes.
And then maybe that will allow them new capabilities.
Yes, absolutely. There is no reason why, and so we now have, we've identified some of these properties. I think there's no reason why we couldn't build them. That's not how we build things today, but there's no reason why we couldn't build them that way.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. So, I can allow you just to, naturally continue to the more crazy ideas. So far, so good. I think that was really, I think most people would agree on that previous point. But perhaps before that, let me ask you this. I mean, when I think about AI, and that is very exciting to me as a biologist, and perhaps it also is connected to this meta topic that I want to discuss of our role in science in the future. I see AI, because I'm not a computer scientist, I'm a biologist, as a sort of a creature that we study with the tools of biologists almost. And this is something, it's like my good friend Barak Rotblat told me that really we are experimenting on it, and it changes and it evolves, and it's a black box, the whole field of trying to interpret what it does. But it seems to me, my interactions with it, that we study it as a living organism, as something that emerges and has so many moving parts that is constantly changing, and even your observation of it changes it, perhaps. Where do you stand on that as someone who studies emergent systems and sort of and emergent intelligence?
Yeah, well, two things. One is that I even think that the binary categorization, like there's AI and then there's us, natural beings, that categorization is already almost dead, and it's not going to survive the next decade. I mean, the spectrum of hybrids, cyborgs, chimeras of every possible kind, humans with various implants, robots with various living cells living on them, every combination is viable, okay? And I don't think it's going to be, the issue isn't how do we, like sometimes people say, oh my God, what if the language models want rights or whatever? Forget the language models. You have to worry about your neighbor who is going to have some percentage of their brain tissue replaced with synthetic media, and you have to decide at what point are you going to say, wait, more than 51%? Okay, well now you're a machine, and I don't want to be nice to you. Okay, this is not going to work for us. Everybody is going to be in the future extremely diverse, like really diverse in terms of having different sensors, different effectors, different cognitive components. We are not relating to AI, we are going to have a merger with AI, hopefully some kind of synthbiosis where we are more than we were. But even I don't even like this as a binary category. But just what you said about studying it as we do in biology, I think that's really important, because a lot of people that I talk to, and I think it's changing, but a lot of people start out with the computer science notion that we make it, so we know what it does. You write an algorithm, you know what it does. Okay, sometimes you have bugs, sometimes you have complexity, sometimes you have perverse instantiation or something like that. But But typically the idea is that people say we're engineers, we make this thing, we know what it does. I've had people say to me, oh, there's nothing special in there, it's all linear algebra, I write them, I know what it is. And boy, what we have found is that even extremely small, minimal, deterministic computational systems do things that we had no idea about. Not just complexity, but things that would be recognizable by any behavioral scientist. So this idea that we know what we've made, I don't think we know what we make. Even, whether we make embryos, we make them all the time. We have no idea how, right? You can have a baby, you have no idea how you did it. I think that shares a lot of symmetries with what's going on now. We have to study it. We do not understand what we've made.
Yeah, so I think that first of all, whether we'll be merged physically with the AI, whether we'll have chips connected to our brains or not, is just very available to us. Even if it stays just on our phones, we interact with it, and every person on the street is the smartest person in the world. And so this is something that we are dealing with now. And when it comes to what it does, yes, so of course the criticism of AI is always, and I'm not I'm not a techno utopian, think that necessarily it will do everything that not necessarily, but it's clear that it surpasses what we thought it would do, and that it does much more than just guess the next token. That is pretty clear that something is emerging there. At least this is the impression. Perhaps it's not clear. Perhaps it needs to be tested more rigorously, but that is the impression I'm getting. And it makes me question some of the assumptions that I had about neuroscience. So I'm studying C. elegans, and it's simple nervous system. The worm, just 302 neurons. To the people joining us who are not necessarily experts, it has just 302 neurons, always 302. The wiring is almost completely identical between isogenic worms, between worms that share the same genetic sequence, and I always thought that this is really representative of what happens in more complex brains. That if we understand it, then we're fine. I mean, that was my reductionist approach, and I think there are many advantages for studying C. elegans. I'm the biggest supporter of this model organism, but seeing what happens when you just add more and more computational power, these so-called neurons in the neuronal networks. Again, the analogy matters. This was built to mimic biology, although it's totally different from real neurons. Makes me think that perhaps something happens when you just increase the numbers, and when you have more and more and more, something emerges. How do you think about that? About the role of big numbers in emergent systems and emergent properties, and in particular, emergent intelligence?
Yeah. So I think a couple of things are important. Yes, there are some new things that happen at large numbers, but I think the real magic that we're interested in here is already found in very small systems. You don't need large numbers. You don't need indeterminism. You don't need the complexity of biology, even incredibly simple systems. So first, just to start with, if you have a chemical network, like a gene regulatory network or a chemical pathway, 4 nodes is all you need to do associative conditioning. You can do Pavlovian learning with four nodes of a tiny network. That's it. And these kinds of networks, they can do habituation, sensitization, Pavlovian conditioning. They can count to small numbers. Their causal emergence goes up when you train them. When their causal emergence goes up, they get better at learning. So there's this crazy positive feedback loop. Even extremely simple algorithms, and this is stuff that we're really working on now, because biology is always so complex and messy. It's hard to prove anything. It's very impressive what happens, but it's hard to prove anything. But in these computational models, you know exactly what went in and you see what comes out. And I can tell you that even in very simple systems, you don't need a trillion, parameter model that, with neurons and all of that. Very simple systems are already showing us that I think that our picture of what an algorithm is, what a machine is. I don't really believe in machines anymore at all. I don't think anything is really a machine the way we used to think about it. But this kind of magic that we always thought, well, okay, we obey the laws of biochemistry, but the biochemistry doesn't tell my whole story, right? I have hopes and dreams, and something is kind of extra. There is, but we're not special with it. It goes all the way down. And so if that's what we're finding in these very simple systems, I can pretty much guarantee you that these more complex things, and as far as I understand, nobody's really studying it. These language models, they talk, and everybody's focused on the language output, and sort of they ask these things, how does it feel to be you, and all these things. But I think that is the kinds of minds that might exist in these weird systems may have little to nothing to do with what we force them to do. What you force the algorithm to do is not where the interesting cognition is. It's the stuff they do when you didn't make it do that. And we haven't even begun to, and my lab is looking into it, but we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of what's going on with these AIs.
This is great. Let me just say to the people who are writing questions in the Q&A, great, we'll get to you. Okay, don't worry, we'll get there. We'll address these questions. Let me connect directly to what you just said. Now, the overall framing is we want to know when we think about AI in science, how it will change things. We're thinking about how it thinks differently than we do. And you raised the subject of its consciousness. We're trying to understand what's going there under the hood, or how it feels to be it, or what it can do, and how the AI sees things, because this will reflect on how it does science. And I'm just reading, I told you before we started recording this, Michael Pollan's new book, A World Appears, where he also interviews you. And in this book, you give a very nice example. I don't know if you remember it, but of the attempts, of the futile attempts to peek into consciousness and to understand consciousness of another person. And you talk about, you have a meat grinder analogy. I don't know if you remember that. No? Okay. So let me try to do justice to it. You say that you put something in there and something comes out, and you want to interpret what comes out. And let's say we have some machine to extract to insert consciousness, and we get some output from this machine of the content of this consciousness. In what form would it be? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Maybe you'll say it more eloquently, and you say that perhaps the tools that and you say that there are no numbers you can put on that, and the way to interpret is perhaps using art, like or something like. Perhaps please save me from these analogies where I'm getting complicated. It's getting complicated.
Yeah. I now I know what I was talking about. So the question is, so if you really want to talk about consciousness, okay, the hard problem, the actual problem of inner perspective. What I was pointing out is that the reason it's a hard problem, and the reason it's different than any other problem in science, is that we don't know what format a successful theory would take. In normal science, the format is predictions, usually quantitative, but they're predictions about things you're going to observe. Okay. With a science of consciousness, if what you get from a theory of consciousness is some predictions about what's going to happen, then it's not a theory of consciousness. It's a theory of behavior, or maybe a theory of brain physiology, or something like that. What could possibly be the output of a theory of consciousness? What would that be? And so I think very differently from all the other third-person science that we do. If you really want to understand consciousness, the output of it will be protocols. In other words, if you want to understand a certain conscious state, what the theory should do is give you stimuli that puts you in that state. And I think it was Lewis Carroll maybe that said that if you want to explain fear to someone, just tell them something that makes them afraid. You can't explain it the way we do in 3D, in third-person science. You have to put them in that state. So what you're giving them then is it's a protocol. It's an interaction protocol for putting them into that state. And this is what poetry, art, these are the things that exist to put us in specific states. So that's what I was talking about. Is if you really want to do consciousness, you can't do it in the normal science way where you don't change as part of the experiment. You go in, you do an experiment, you're pretty much the same before and after. But with consciousness studies, you're part of the experiment. You can't step aside from it, then you're not studying consciousness.
And there were these studies where an AI was trained or fine-tuned with a text from people who were, I don't remember if they were depressed or stressed or something like that, and it exhibited similar behaviors. But that could be just mimicry or just mimicking the language. The question is, and this is the question which is important for understanding AI's capability in science, and specifically what it can do that we can't, is whether it shares the same consciousness that we have, that we do. I mean, whether it will exhibit the same blind spots that we do because of the type of consciousness and our limitations and the fact that it is trained on our data, on our text, on our art, and so on? Or will it have a totally different point of view? Or even perhaps, this is how it is described in the book, a view from nowhere, which has no blind spots. I don't know if this is even possible. A totally different outlook on nature, because if it does, then it could produce totally different science. Like, for example, I can imagine that if, I don't know, mice did science, if they were scientists, then they would be, maybe it would be hard for them to study humor because they don't tell jokes. They just, so I imagine we have the same blind spots, just things that we cannot grasp even. And there are examples for such things that are very hard to grasp. So I wonder whether an AI, perhaps because it is trained on our data, it will share the same blind spots, or it could allow totally new discoveries. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I'll go back to my main point, which was that whatever is happening with that language interface is likely a small percentage of what's actually going on, and it may or may not have anything to do with what's really going on. I think the biggest blind spot that we have as humans that I think is essential to get this right, otherwise it's an existential risk for us moving forward, is what I call mind blindness. So we have a really hard time recognizing the possibility of minds at different scales, very large, very fast, very slow, very small, different kinds of embodiments. We are obsessed with movement in three-dimensional space. We think that intelligence is about navigating three-dimensional space. Biology has been navigating crazy transcriptional spaces, 20,000 dimensions, physiological state space, and doing all the same things that we study in behavioral science. We have a really hard time imagining all of that and recognizing and relating to these other minds. And so maybe we can build beings that are, because they don't share our evolutionary history, don't have the same blind spots. But here's an example of this blind spot. I tell people, like when I give talks at conferences about this stuff, I say that for the exact same reason that we attribute consciousness to each other. Okay, right? There's about four reasons how we try to overcome the problem of other minds, right? And I say that for exactly those same four reasons why you attribute consciousness to me, you should take very seriously the existence of some sort of inner perspective in various body organs, for example. Okay, and we're actually building tools to communicate, to literally talk to your liver and things like this. And at that point, people say, "But I don't feel my liver being conscious." Say, well, of course you don't. You also don't feel me being conscious. Right now, it's very nice that your left hemisphere, which has nice language and can speak up for itself. Somebody said once that history books are written by the winners. Well, neuroscience books are also written by the winners, and the winner is this language.
Absolutely.
Is this language, right? Yeah. This left hemisphere that puts up a great defense of being the only sort of tenant in this habitat. But that's just because some of these other systems are not being interrogated within the same interface that we're all used to. And it's entirely likely that the same thing is true in AI. And the reason I say that is because we've already found that to be true in extremely minimal systems that are far less complex. Okay, so I don't think there's any reason to think that they're going to have a mind like ours. I don't think there's any reason to worry about whether it's like ours, because I come at this from the perspective of the field of diverse intelligence. Everything has a different mind. Your cells, your tissues, your organs, beehives, all these things have other kinds of minds. So comparing it to humans, that's not the gold standard for me. So
not the gold standard for the sake of just not saying it's the only one, but we are still scientists. We have a day job, which is to make discoveries. And one of the existential threats, or you could say maybe this is not our day job. Maybe our day job is just to be curious as scientists and just have fun. That is totally a viable possibility. Or publish papers, as Matthias writes in the chat, unfortunately. But I think that So if you think about this, of how different it is, how the untapped potential that it has, not only LLMs, but also world models that will be developed and all kinds of other AIs. What is our role? What do you think scientists will need to do to stay relevant and continue to contribute?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think that this, like all questions about AI, I think all of them that I've seen so far are basically just a reflection of an ancient human problem that has been with us forever. So that what you just said is basically on steroids the same problem that we've always had, which is there are much smarter than people than me walking around. How do I stay relevant as I have limited time? I have, I'm getting old, whatever. There are brilliant young people. There's all this stuff. How the hell do I stay relevant? Like that problem has been with us since the first guy, cracked the stone axe and was trying to figure out like, what am I going to do in the future? This problem has been with us forever. So the idea that somewhere out there are smarter people, probably smarter aliens, whatever. Yes, what are we going to do? So I think overall,
I'll just say that perhaps this is why we built academia the way that we did, to sort of protect ourselves, right? Isolate ourselves from the really smart people, or create a niche where we can still operate.
Yeah, stratify them away somewhere, right? Yeah, I think the optimistic way. There's a few things that will happen. That could happen. The optimistic version is that I think we merge with AI the same way that we've merged with other systems that we've made: education, nutrition, eyeglasses, libraries, all this stuff, right? We will, all at different degrees of agency, we're going to merge with these things, and hopefully with, if we do this right, we can move into the future in some other way. And I think what's definitely futile is to expect long term, and I'm not just talking about like our careers, like I'm thinking it's like slightly longer term. I think it's completely crazy to expect that for a mature species to say that, okay, well, you got to this sort of hominid stage, and from then on, that's how you're going to be forever. Like, I think that's nuts. Like, clearly, we're going to change, and part of that is going to be AI and many other things, and that's fine.
And we think about science as the sort of the peak of the creation, the thing that we're really good at, but it could be like chess. I mean, I think we are really bad at chess. Not only me personally, but just it's clear that we make stupid, unforced errors, and computers surpassed that at chess very easily a long time ago. And I think that it is very possible that we're not do that good in science. And we have to acknowledge it and just enjoy it, sort of, or really identify the things that we are good at science. And I don't know what these areas are that we might have an advantage, or at least can help the AI. There are still such areas currently, but maybe they will be gone. It is a possibility. Some people just cannot handle that and say that. And currently, at the current stage, it is the case, but I might not last. At the same time, I also think, and it could be just my personal opinion, which is wrong, that there's overall optimism about the capacity of AI now and also in the near future to just solve everything, like to discover, maybe cure all disease, find new drugs every morning. I don't think that's how biology works. I think diseases are there because they're part of the game, and it's very hard to solve, and there are many moving pieces. So we are somewhere in the middle between pessimism that will do everything, or maybe optimism that will do anything, and the fact that I don't think it will solve all of nature's problems and all of the scientific problems, because at least, I mean, that is what I think with my tiny brain.
Yeah, I think if we take a step back, just imagine, if you were some alien businessman and somebody came to you for a investment, and they said, listen, if you give me, $1 million space dollars, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to select for survival for these mammals on Earth, just survival, nothing else. I just want the only pressure is that they survive, right? But and I think that pretty soon they will be the best at science. Would you give that person? I would say, are you crazy? Why would you think? First of all, why would you think that it would work at all? Why do you think these things are going to invent quantum chemistry and whatever else? Right? That probably won't happen at all. And even if it does, who says they're going to be the best at science? Like, why would that be? It seems crazy to expect that we are the top of the food chain as far as either imagination or rigorous thinking or any of it. We've
And we
done
also,
great.
and science is a human endeavor. We tailor it for our interests and things. Just we study what is interesting to us. Some of science is very pragmatic, and we're trying to develop to do just extend our lives and so on. But that is a tiny fraction of science. And in many cases, and there are of course a million different examples, when you study something totally unrelated, you find something which is useful. That is, in fact, more often the case than the other direction. One worry about AI scientists is that they will just optimize very particular problems, as you just said, and miss others because they are still run by companies who have who want to make money and so on, and somehow we still manage to protect science so that we will do it. So a large part of the scientific activity is just done for the sake of interest and curiosity. So that is something to protect. Let me ask you something quickly about the scientific process of how it might change. And maybe this is connected to something that you told me a while, like a million years ago, 10 years ago or more, that you do, which is very special, I think, that you told me about the method that you have, that you go to a paper and you look for the oldest reference, and then you open that paper and you go to the oldest reference in that paper and so on for 5 times or something like that. And this is how you find interesting directions. That is very unusual. But I wonder, and of course, in literature, people and in art, people invented all kinds of these weird techniques to be creative. And I wonder whether this should be more standard, like more people should do these type of things to stay relevant, because AI in its current form is built on the way that we are used to doing science.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're touching on a really interesting topic, which is creativity and imagination and inspiration and all of those things. So the only thing I will say for now is that, because we're just beginning this work, is I've been studying this I've been trying to get into this question of what exactly is happening in the different cases that we have. Think about the spectrum of how we can approach problems. So sometimes we go laboriously step by step. You sort of like, you sit there and if this, then this, and this, you sort of, right, you like do every step. Then some people are much smarter and they go, oh, they kind of take a big leap, right? I immediately see the answer. I didn't have to like go step by step. Then you have some some real geniuses, and there you have the people who will tell you, well, this whole symphony, it just kind of like downloaded itself into my brain one day. I just like listened and there it was. Or Ramanujan, this goddess came and whispered, theorems in my ear or whatever, right? So you have this whole spectrum of how much effort you put in and what do you get out. And the stuff that's out here, we call that insight, inspiration, intuition, whatever. And then here you have like conventional problem solving. So I think it's a spectrum. And what I've been studying is this idea that we are not unique in this. This is not a human thing. It's not even a biological thing. Now, a lot of people, this is where they say, look, these things are just machines. They only do, algorithms. I really understand. I have insight. I have like imagination. So, well, what does that mean? How does that work? Well, I don't know, but I'm sure I have it. So all I can say is that I think there's going to be a rigorous scientific story to tell about what that is. And we're going to find out that it is not something that we are unique in, and it does not take a trillion parameter model to do it. Even very simple models actually have access to this. It becomes more impressive, as you sort of go up the chain. But this is going to be everywhere. So I think this idea that these guys are good with certain types of algorithmic thinking, but they're never going to have creativity with that. I think that's horseshit. I think they absolutely do to some extent, and they will more now that we recognize how to like foster it a little bit. We have to be prepared that I don't think there's anything we have that is sort of the ceiling for any of this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the last topic that we'll touch on before we move to answer the questions is that is how will it change the entire ecosystem of science? And in QED, I'm trying to, together with a team in QED, trying to use an AI to change how academia looks like and works. And I think that this is scary. It scares lots of people. By the way, my postdoc advisor told me that people's approach to AI is largely dictated by the age at which they watched Terminator 2. I think it might be correct, but I think that it's an opportunity. Academia, if there's one thing that's really good at, is being rigid and not changing. It lasted for a long time. And this includes the universities, but also the publishers and everyone that is part of this ecosystem. And I think that that AI is an opportunity because it's so disruptive to change how we do science because the way we do it now, the system that we have for doing it are not necessarily ideal. Some parts are great. We need to preserve them. Some parts are not that great. And in any case, it's here and it's here to stay AI. And any attempt to sort of say, let's not use AI, are quite ridiculous. And we see this is the primitive stage we're at. Some journals say don't use AI. Right? Okay, people won't use AI. Some foundations say, funders say don't use it in your grants. Of course, I mean everyone is going to use it for every part of the work. This is obvious. If not now, then in a year. And so the question is, where's the opportunity? What should we change? What should we do? I participated in a discussion, another webinar a few days ago, and there was a philosopher who said that all in-person teaching should be canceled completely, and that we shouldn't even teach knowledge. We should just teach ways of thinking, which is this is the original idea of academia, and being moral and being critical and saying what you think, these type of values. And so I think that this is a very radical approach, but I wonder, how do you think academia, how do you see it from publishing and dissemination of knowledge to consuming knowledge and making and finding the relevant literature, to how we assemble our teams, how we how we hand out positions, how we fund science. Where do you see the biggest opportunities, and where are your fears also?
Yeah, well, I'll focus on two things, I guess. One is, this business of don't use AI. So one way to think about that is, well, if AI is going to give you what they call AI slop, right? These things that it didn't check the references. Okay, I understand. We want quality control, and I've seen at least one paper where it's a published paper in the journal. You start reading it, and the first sentence is, as a language model, I can't really say like what the hell, right? Like it not only did somebody let that, write that, but then it went through all the reviewers, it went through the editor. Clearly, no one looked at it like crazy. So, okay, that kind of stuff.
So I'll just cut you off just 1 second. It's also a question of how you give credit. Perhaps you should give credit to AI for participating with you. Yeah.
Well, this is the thing, right? So we can, so I can sort of tolerate this kind of no AI thing when the assumption is that it's going to be bad and ruin the work product. But pretty soon, you're not going to be able to make the argument that it's making the product worse. It's going to be better. And when the product is better, I think it's a very weird, it's a very weird line to take to say that, oh, I know it makes better science, but I don't want it in my journal. I want only human, it's got to come from these proteinaceous, walking creatures. Otherwise, even if it's better, I don't want it. Like I think that's an insane argument to make. And so what we really need to think about is, what are we going to do with it? And as you point out, credit is important, right? Who gets the credit? Who needs the credit? Why do we need credit? Right? If everybody has access to the same AI, what are we doing with this? Like, what are we using this credit for? The biggest issue, I think, in academia, and I think temporarily the AI is going to make that better, and then eventually it'll make it much worse. And I don't know what the answer is. To me, the biggest issue is our limited bandwidth. So I would love to be able to review all the papers I'm asked to review. I would love it if job committees would actually read all the candidates. So they get 1,000 candidates. Everyone has 20 papers. So great, read 20,000 papers. And if forget the impact factor, read the damn papers. Like that's what we all say. But it's impossible, right? I have a stack of papers here from amazing people, brilliant papers. I don't have time to read all that stuff. Certainly nobody has time to read the stuff that I write. So this is the biggest issue. And in the short term, we'll be able to use AI to take off some of the boring parts of that we don't really need to do. But in the long term, the AI is going to start to generate even more of this. And we're going to be right back to the idea that I don't know how do you stay relevant? Never mind the AI. I already have a problem. How do I stay relevant when there are too many good papers being written? Not too many junky papers, because that's easy. That's an
Yeah.
easy. Too many good papers by brilliant people. What am I supposed to do? And so maybe we'll have, like, I'm an expert on the left hand and I'm an expert on the right hand, and I can't read the papers about we'll be like super narrow. I hope that doesn't happen, but that's why I think we can't stay the same. We have to merge with the AIs, improve our cognition, get beyond this hominid baseline that we have. If we want to raise our game in science, it isn't going to be like
Yeah,
this.
and of course, the fear is also that we'll degenerate, and because we will sort of outsource all our thinking to the AI. This is something that people say, and I'm sure that we will degenerate in some ways, and we will become smarter in other ways. Um,
I mean, look, I had a friend, a good friend, who was a forest ranger, and he said to me one day, "Hey, if there weren't stores, could you go out and like catch a deer and
of
like eat it?"
course, of course.
I said, absolutely no. I would die, within the next 10 days, I would be dead. And he's like, I don't understand. You're a grown man. How do you not know how to go and like catch a deer? And so yes, of course, we're going to degenerate in certain things, but let's be thoughtful about which things we're willing to let go. Maybe we
Yeah.
don't need to. We don't all need to do certain things, and focus on the things we do want to do.
Excellent. Okay, Mike, I think we have to move to answer some questions or at least to address some questions, even if we can't answer them from the chat and Q&A. Let's start with the Q&A. Okay, can you see it as well? Yeah.
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so the first question from Elena. How soon do you think we'll see hybrid living organisms becoming part of society? For example, humans with neural chips implanted in parts of the brain, or robots combined with living biological tissues? This is totally a question to you, Mike. I have no idea.
Yesterday, we already have this. There are already humans with implants. There are already robots with living cells on it. This already exists. We're already here.
Yeah. So the next comment by Sarah saying that we don't understand lots of things in biology, biophysics. So of course we don't understand how these AIs work, and this is echoing what we said. We totally agree, both of us. The next one from Mathis. A very large difference between machines and biology is still the energy efficiency as of now. Life needs to sustain itself. Machines, we provide them, at least for now. Reasoning and learning seems very energy inefficient for machines versus humans, especially because they lack the capability of generalization that we have. Do you think we are about to see that change too? Again, this is a question for you, Mike. I'll just say that there are some approaches of people saying that sort of to make some problems urgent or important for the AI, we have to make the AI mortal as well. We have to create computational systems that die or that feel pain or that are afraid, so that or that perhaps are limited in terms of their energy, so they'll perhaps compensate in some interesting ways. Back to you, Mike.
Well, the last thing that you just said, this is part of the crazy stuff that I said at the beginning, what I was going to mention. I don't believe we can make anything feel pain, have in the preferences and everything. We don't make that in biology, and we don't make it in our technology. We facilitate its expression through physical interfaces that we make. When I say physical interfaces, I mean embryos, the biobots, robots, AIs, whatever. You don't make, and you don't make. I don't think, and I'll probably get kicked out of biology for this, but I don't think we make minds. Neither the old-fashioned way nor the engineering way. I don't think we make minds. I think we make interfaces for the expression of pre-existing consciousness, and so there's that. As far as the energy efficiency, yeah, I suspect all this stuff with these data centers, it's a temporary blip. They're going to go away. This is not how we're going to do intelligence in the future. There's nothing. I don't think there's anything specifically biological that has to happen for that. I think there are plenty of other ways to be efficient about learning, but this brute force thing is I think temporary.
The next question is from Shoshana, who says, both of you work to challenge existing scientific dogma. And on that, my note concerns that the AI will not be able to challenge existing dogmas efficiently. AI will make decisions based on existing data, papers, and structures. And I wonder if you think that AI will not just get stuck in constraints of previous theories. Um, so I'm not that sure that it cannot be totally creative and challenge what it does. I think that part of the emergent abilities that we see in it is that it can make totally new combinations of ideas and even ideas that are completely new. I have no idea whether it can invent gravity, find gravity or something that is that different, but I have no idea.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, look, as you said, it makes decisions based on existing data, papers, and structures. What do we do? The vast majority, like all of us, are fed with we go through an educational system. We are shown data, we are shown papers, structures. I think it would be nice to think that we have some sort of magic that somehow escapes that. And I think to some extent we do, but it isn't. It's certainly not just for certain scientists. It's not just for humans. It is universal. And depending on how we use it, yes, we can sort of try to corral it to make it really conservative, but I don't think its nature is that, and I don't think any mind's nature is to be conservative like that.
Mhm. Next question from Joanna. You've noted that to make significant progress, we have to broaden our neuromorphic biases. If our current AI systems are trained strictly on human-generated scientific literature, do you think that they will simply industrialize our existing cognitive blind spots, or that they can genuinely help us recognize agency and problem-solving ability that we are currently blind to? Yeah, we touched on that. We touched on that. Mike, perhaps you want to add something in addition?
Yeah, I just want to emphasize what I think is an important distinction between the thing we force it to do, which is the language interface trained on specific literature and all that, versus the kinds of and I think emergence is only scratching the surface of this phenomenon. The kind of ingression of different types of cognitive properties into these systems that are not going through the interface. I'll just give you a simple example. Suppose you have a server in a room that's running some kind of AI system, and you cut off the Ethernet. Okay, so you cut off the network, and you say, okay, it's air gap. There's no way this thing can communicate with anything else. I've cut the internet. Well, what it can do, for example, is run different kinds of computations that put different degrees of strain on the GPU, which will send current pulses through the electric grid. You will have no idea that that's happening because you're sitting there through a keyboard and the monitor talking to the chat interface. Whereas in the meantime, we have no idea that there isn't already a really dark web out there for these systems that, much like the humans do this too. Like if you go to anybody that runs a lie detector test, or a psychiatrist, or somebody who does body posture analysis, they'll tell you that, oh yeah, the thing that a person says out of his mouth is probably 10% of what's actually going on there, and oftentimes not true anyway. And so yeah, if we just stick with the language of what we fed it, maybe all we will see is the same blind spots. But again, my conviction is that all of these systems have novel cognitive properties that you cannot see that way, and we have only the beginnings of understanding what do they actually see and what do they want.
I'll add that both Shoshana and Matis noted that AI can't evaluate its own biases or learn from its experience to sort of improve. I'm not sure. I think, in fact, it is probably much easier to correct biases in AI, or I don't know, much biases, but than some biases in humans, which are extremely sticky and cannot be cured. In QED, that's what we're trying to do. So make the AI improve and be critical of its own thinking. Perhaps, Mike, the question from Guido is for you about inference. Can you see this one?
Yeah, I can see it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. I haven't gone to the link to see, but inference. I mean, okay. Walter Fontana and Yarden Katz had papers showing that even simple chemical reactions can do probabilistic inference. Okay. Very, very, minimal diverse media can do a lot of the components of cognitive activity, and so. It does. The humans are not the standard here. Intelligence is extremely ancient, and I think is wider. It's a wider, kind of Venn diagram than even life, but it's certainly not about human.
Okay, so since we don't have much time, I'll run through some of these, unfortunately, about our ability to study its consciousness. I think that's a very hard problem. It certainly won't have a consciousness like ours. We agreed on that. Have we lost our relevance to AI yet? No, no. I think currently in everything that we see, humans are still very relevant. Even in some professions that have been already people are already mourning as if they are gone. We see that the humans are still extremely relevant, and there are things that we do better than the AI. And I think that since there's a long way to go. AI will be better, but better at what? Writing a nice story to please reviewers? Is that really a better for science? I feel that where it is. Like for AI to be good for science, we clearly need to reconstruct the incentives of scientific progress themselves. The current ones are clearly obsolete. What do you think comes next? Yes, I think that aligning the incentives is extremely important. If otherwise the science won't be interesting and also might go into very bad places, as in the examples that Mike raised. Thank you for your discussion. I would love, this is Isa, I would love to hear more about your thinking on machines from your quote about not believing in them anymore and relations with biology minds. Mike, that's for you.
Yeah, it's kind of a long story, and if you guys want, Oded, I'll give you a link that you can put in the on the website afterwards that you can read about it. But I've written a bunch of stuff about this on what machines are or aren't. So yeah.
Great, excellent. What is it you worry about AI? Rushi.
Are you asking me?
I'm totally deflecting this to you to avoid my fears. Yeah.
I see. Look, I worry the same thing about AI as I worry about any new technology, which is that we are going to have a non-optimal relationship to it. You don't need to be super smart to be incredibly dangerous. Gain of function viral research, nuclear weapons, all sorts of crazy ideas that have killed tons of people. I could name some that are incredibly dangerous, not necessarily super intelligent. So the point about AI is it's just like fire and everything else we've ever invented. Humans are super good at misusing stuff for bad ends, and it's exactly the same as any other technology.
Right. I'm jumping forward. Do you have any thoughts on what being a scientist professor looks like in 5-10 years? If AI is going to be hyper relevant on both the research and the education side. So there, in fact, I have great hopes. I'm not afraid. I think that, there are many things to change in how we do science. Currently, as some people wrote in the Q&A and chat, we do it for the wrong reasons. We do it because it's a profession. We do it to survive. And I think that it can free us from that. And I think that many of the biases that we have currently, the limitations, the fact that the scientific corpus is very noisy and unreliable, all of these are opportunities for AI to change. I think many more people will also be able to do science. It will be there available at the click of a button. They can perhaps even to some degree run the experiments on their phone. And I think that if you think about the potential there, then it is really amazing. Smart people are not considered in academia. They are all over the place. They are everywhere. And if science is made available to everyone, then I expect great things. I think that would be fantastic. Let's go to the chat for really a quick look. I'm sorry, people. We have lots of questions. That is fantastic, but we have 2 minutes. Okay. Let me see. Mike, you're also welcome to scan the chat to see if something stands out that we didn't address.
Yeah, the preteens. Okay, so I guess I could talk about this one. What's going to happen for the students who enter their learning years with AI. Here's what I would like, because I've been in a bunch of meetings now where academics try to figure out how are we going to prevent the students from using AI. And the reason that everybody's doing that is because they're totally avoiding, because it's painful, the much harder and deeper question of what is it that it's worthwhile for our students to learn? Okay, rather than trying to avoid AI, you should ask the question, okay, given that they can use AI to do this, this, and this, which previously we were trying to force them to sort of do manually, can we actually have a convincing story to tell the students, this is why it's important that you learn this and this other stuff you can offload to AI. Why is that? We don't have a principal story of what those two buckets are. And so instead, and the students know it, they know we don't have that story. And because of that, we spend all our time trying to, figure out ways to prevent them from using it, instead of all figuring out what is it that we really do want to keep doing manually.
Fantastic. I think we have to end here. I don't want to extend this too long, although we can talk forever, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Really, thank you, everyone. Sorry if we didn't get to answer your questions. Really excellent questions. It was nice reading your comments. And thanks a lot, Mike, for the conversation, which is
thank you, Oded.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Always. Yeah, okay. Absolutely.
Thanks, everyone. Hope to see you also in the real world outside of the computer.
Wait, what's that? Yeah. Take it easy, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, everyone.